Disney movies have done it all. They've made us laugh, cry, sing, and dance, and so much more. And as it turns out, they've been teaching us about mental illness all this time as well. That's kind of dark, right? How do these seemingly feel-good and innocent-looking movies do that? In today's video, we're talking about Disney films that depict real-life mental illness. Let's get started. First up, Finding Nemo, Anxiety. We know Finding Nemo is a story about a father's heroic journey across the ocean to save his child. But did you know it's also about how Marlin comes to manage his anxiety? Oh, Marlin. Marlin witnessed a barracuda kill his wife and all but one of their eggs, Nemo. Understandably, this traumatic event haunts him for years and years. So much that it makes him an overprotective parent who has a hard time even letting Nemo go to school because he's scared of losing his son. That's not fair. When Nemo is kidnapped by those heartless scuba divers, Marlin has no choice but to face his fears. As the movie progresses, we see him deal with his crippling fear of the open ocean as he frantically looks for his only remaining family. Yeah, we're crying. Marlin's growth reflects how exposure therapy, a proven treatment for anxiety, works. In exposure therapy, people are faced with their fears in a supportive environment. By directly facing what fears them, people learn that most anxiety-inducing situations are usually not life-threatening. We're sure it helps, but that doesn't sound fun. That's exactly what Marlin goes through as we see him get over his separation anxiety. By facing his fears, he feels more capable of making friends. He learns how to be a better parent, and he's more open to going on new adventures. And if you already thought Finding Nemo was devastating, how about now? Next, Inside Out, Depression. One of Disney's best movies, Inside Out, deals with Riley's depression and the stages through which it progresses. It shows us that it's okay to not feel happy all the time and teaches us to embrace all the emotions that we have. Inside Out follows a young girl, Riley, whose life is turned upside down when her family relocates from an ideal life in Minnesota to a very stressful one in San Francisco. We see the story unfold through her emotions, joy, sadness, anger, fear, and disgust as she learns how to adjust to her new life. Having your whole life turned inside out? We feel you, Riley. This incredible movie offers a framework for understanding basic emotions in the simplest terms possible. Each emotion, whether it's happiness, disgust, or fear, is shown flawlessly as a separate character, which makes it super easy to follow. As we see Riley grow up, her character arc teaches us how to cope with change, stress, and other difficult emotions. We also see how all emotions are useful, even the ones we find extremely unpleasant. We learn that it's important to know that what you're feeling and deal with it in a constructive way. Thank you, Riley, for showing us this, and thank you, Disney, for Riley. Then in Up, Grief and Anger Issues. Alright, this one's gonna hurt. The widely loved movie Up teaches us about grief, as well as anger issues that come along with it. Up is a fantastic film for so many reasons. It's wholesome, beautiful, and wonderful in every way. It portrays a very realistic depiction of the grieving process. Carl's journey through the movie shows us a lot of unsettling realities about death that are usually never discussed. Not only is Carl mourning Ellie's death, but also the fact they would never be able to visit Paradise Falls together. We're tearing up just thinking about it. Also, after Ellie's death, Carl kind of acts like a jerk. He hurts a construction worker and comes across as just an old and bitter man. At first, she even rejects Russell and Doug. The thing about grief is that it also brings along a whole lot of rage. And this aspect of it is not talked about enough in our culture. Often people feel guilty for feeling angry whilst mourning, but they don't realize it's a natural element of grieving. Think about it. We all know how it feels. One of the most devastating things about death is that it leaves things unfinished. With that comes some very justifiable anger over not having enough time with your loved ones. And that's exactly what we see in Carl's reaction to Ellie's passing. It's never enough. Up teaches us that it's okay to feel angry when you're grieving. In fact, it should be normalized, but it passes, and eventually you start to feel better. Carl's journey teaches us that too. It shows us that you're never too old to form new and meaningful friendships, and it's never too late to go on an adventure. Ellie would have been so proud of Carl. We know we were. Next in Frozen, Paranoia and Agoraphobia. Frozen is Disney's biggest accomplishment. When it first came out, there wasn't a single kid who wasn't yelling, "Let it go," at the top of their lungs. And while this movie has taught us how love is at the center of everything, it also showed us Elsa's struggle with paranoia and agoraphobia. We know that Elsa's born with a magical ability to create and control ice and snow. In her early years, she has an ability to handle these powers and ends up causing harm, like almost killing her own sister. No matter how many times you watch Frozen, this always breaks her heart. As a result, she develops disorders like paranoia and agoraphobia. Her paranoia makes her terrified of her own abilities, and she's scared of using her powers in fear of causing more incidents where she might harm somebody. Her agoraphobia makes her shut herself out from her family and society in order to ensure she doesn't harm anybody else. Oh well, she's treated like an outcast, and she feels ashamed of her powers she has no control over. Anybody struggling with mental illness knows how alienating it is to not have anybody around you that understands you. As time goes on, Elsa comes to realize that the secret to controlling her powers is through love. Anna's love and acceptance for her sister are ultimately what save her, and we love to see it. Another is Winnie the Pooh. All characters were struggling with something. Well, this one's kind of a reach, but also somehow makes perfect sense. Let's see, was everybody on Winnie the Pooh struggling with some kind of disorder? Okay, hear us out. We know that Winnie loves honey, and that's an understatement. He's obsessed with it, and he's super impulsive when it comes to it. He simply can't stop eating honey, and it's all he thinks about and all he talks about. This directly points toward an eating disorder. Piglet is always nervous or scared. He has weak self-esteem, and he stutters when he's talking. Could it be anxiety? Maybe he experienced an incident that gave him unresolved trauma. For the rest of the characters, it can be said that Tigger has ADHD. We see him struggling with focusing and he can never sit still. Rabbit can be seen as somebody with OCD, as he's a bit too orderly. Eeyore suffers from depression because he's always down. Al has dyslexia and short-term memory loss, as we often see him misspell and misread words. He also has trouble remembering things, and so often he forgets things as soon as he says them. And that's not it. Christopher Robin might have schizophrenia. His friends literally showing up depending on his mood. Hey, we don't like talking about it either, but the signs are there. And then we have depression and Beauty and the Beast. It's nearly impossible to make a video about Disney without the mention of Beauty and the Beast. And of course, like most Disney films, this also teaches us a very important lesson. Depression can leave you completely crippled. You ever notice that the Beast is displaying signs of depression throughout the movie? We see how often he's willing to just give up and let himself die. That's not okay. As soon as Belle shows up, the Beast assumes the situation is hopeless. She'll obviously never love him enough to break the spell. It's his servants who have to convince him to actually try with her, remember? We see that he doesn't even try to defend himself until Belle gives him a reason to. He actually doesn't care if he lives or dies. Now we're just getting sad. In the film, the Beast constantly refers to himself as a monster and just assumes no one ever likes him. Also, when most of the other characters talk about the years they spent cursed, they refer to them as dark, empty, and secluded, all pointing toward feelings of depression. We're so glad the Beast found Belle and he got back to being himself. It's hard to think of their story ending in any other way. It had to be a happily ever after. They're literally iconic. That's a wrap for this video. Which of these do you find the most fascinating? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.